For most of her life, Princess Caroline of Monaco has been called the most graceful royal in Europe. Poised, private, impossible to rattle. But the story behind that calm face is far darker than anyone imagined. They say the Grimaldis are cursed, that no one in this family is allowed to keep love for long. Caroline lost her mother in a crash. She lost her husband in another. And when she finally tried again, she chose a man whose name now fills police reports across the continent. What really happened inside that third marriage? The truth is stranger than the rumors. On her 42nd birthday, January 23, 1999, Princess Caroline stepped into the glittering mirrored halls of the Prince's Palace to marry for the third time. She was pregnant, though few people knew it. The man waiting for her was a German prince whose crown belonged to a vanished world, whose temper had filled newspapers across Europe, and whose former wife had been one of Caroline's own friends. By then, Caroline had already lived through more heartbreak than most people could imagine. She had lost her mother. She had lost a husband. She had carried the weight of a family many believed was cursed. She had fought her way back from grief so deep that her hair had fallen out. Still, on that day, she chose to believe in another beginning. The marriage that began in scandal would slowly harden into one of the saddest royal arrangements in modern Europe. It never officially ended. Yet, in every way that mattered, it fell apart. To understand Caroline's third marriage, it helps to begin with the shadow that seemed to follow her family everywhere. For generations, the Grimaldis of Monaco have been linked to an old legend that says no member of the ruling house will ever find lasting happiness in love. The 20th century brought broken marriages, scandals, and sudden deaths that struck the Grimaldis again and again. But for Caroline, two losses cut deeper than all the rest. Caroline Louise Marguerite Grimaldi was born on January 23, 1957, in the Prince's Palace. She was the eldest child of Prince Rainier III and GraceKelly, the American film star who left Hollywood for a throne. Caroline studied at the Sorbonne, spoke several languages, and from her teenage years was praised as one of the most beautiful young women in Europe. Then everything changed in September 1982. On September 13th, GraceKelly was driving home to Monaco with her youngest daughter Stephanie along a steep mountain road when she suffered a stroke. She lost control of the car, which plunged down a slope. Grace died the next day from her injuries. She was only 52. Caroline was 25 when her mother died. In the middle of that sorrow, her father asked her to become the de facto First Lady of Monaco, to carry Grace's cultural and charitable duties. Caroline had been raised with a deep sense of duty mixed with obedience and guilt. She accepted that what she had to do would always come before what she personally wanted. By the time her mother died, Caroline had already lived through one public romantic disappointment. In 1978, at 21, she married Philippe Junot, a Parisian banker known for his playboy reputation. He was 17 years older. GraceKelly had strongly opposed the marriage, and she was right. The marriage collapsed by 1980. Junot died in January 2026. Then, after Grace's death, happiness seemed to return. Caroline fell in love with Stefano Casiraghi, the handsome heir to an Italian industrial fortune and a champion offshore powerboat racer. He was grounded, devoted, and focused on family. When reporters searched for anything damaging, they found nothing. Caroline and Stefano married in a small civil ceremony on December 29, 1983. She was already more than 3 months pregnant. For a few precious years, that hope seemed justified. Their son Andrea was born in 1984. Charlotte followed in 1986, and Pierre arrived in 1987. Together, they built a warm family life away from the sharpest glare of attention. For a while, it seemed Caroline had found what the Grimaldis had long been denied. Then the story turned again. On October 3, 1990, Stefano Casiraghi was racing off the coast of Monaco defending his world championship. Earlier in the race, he had stopped to help rescue another competitor whose boat had caught fire. After losing time, he pushed forward in rough water at high speed. His catamaran flipped and cartwheeled. He became trapped in the cockpit and suffered fatal neck injuries. He was 30 years old. Caroline was in Paris when the news reached her. At 33, She was a widow with 3 children under 7. Stefano's funeral took place at Monaco's Cathedral of St. Nicholas, the same cathedral where GraceKelly's funeral had been held 8 years earlier. Caroline disappeared from view. She left Monaco with her children and retreated to a rented villa in Saint-Rémy-de-Provence. She wanted distance from gossip, spectacle, and pressure. For years, the family lived in near seclusion. When Caroline slowly began to reappear in the mid-1990s, the public was startled. The fashion icon appeared with her hair cut down to a buzz cut, much of it gone. She had developed alopecia. The sight of a glamorous princess suddenly bald triggered intense speculation. Prince Albert publicly said the condition was only skin deep. Even so, many observers linked it to years of deep stress and grief. During that same period, Caroline had gone through a difficult 5-year relationship with French actor Vincent Lindon, which reportedly became volatile. Whatever the precise medical cause, the image left a lasting mark. Caroline, once held up as a symbol of European glamour, now looked like a woman stripped down by sorrow. It was during this fragile time that a very different kind of man entered her life. Prince Ernst August of Hanover looked impressive on paper. Born in 1954, he stood at the head of the old House of Hanover, a direct descendant of Britain's King George III. Yet his titles had long since lost political power. Germany abolished its monarchies after World War I, so Ernst August ruled nothing. What remained was the name, the history, and inherited status. Alongside that pedigree came a reputation for a fierce temper and excess. Since 1981, he had been married to Chantal Hacheli, a Swiss heiress. The couple had 2 sons. There was another detail that made everything more explosive. Chantal was not a stranger to Caroline. She was one of her friends. For years, Chantal had tolerated her husband's affairs on one quiet condition. That arrangement ended when rumors spread that the other woman was Princess Caroline. By 1996, talk of a romance was growing. Soon photographs emerged showing the pair kissing in the south of France. Chantal, humiliated, filed for divorce. The marriage ended in 1997, clearing the path for one of the most talked about royal romances of the decade. Caroline had stepped directly into the ruins of a friend's marriage. The romance moved forward. On January 23, 1999, Caroline's 42nd birthday, the two married in a civil ceremony at the Prince's Palace. She was about 2 months pregnant. The wedding carried unusual constitutional meaning. As a descendant of the British royal family, Ernst August fell under Britain's Royal Marriages Act of 1772. Queen Elizabeth II, his distant cousin, formally approved the marriage. Since Caroline was Roman Catholic, Ernst August lost his place in the British line of succession. On July 20, 1999, Caroline gave birth to their daughter, Princess Alexandra of Hanover, in Vöcklabruck, Austria. For a short while, it seemed Caroline had found a new chapter. Yet the shine did not last. If Stefano Casiraghi had seemed untouched by scandal, Ernst August quickly became the opposite. In 1999, he was fined for attacking a German photographer. In 2000 came the moment that made him notorious across Europe. At the Expo 2000 World's Fair in Hanover, he was photographed urinating on the Turkish pavilion. The Turkish embassy formally accused him of insulting the Turkish people. From that point on, he was portrayed as an out-of-control aristocrat. Around the same period, he was accused of assaulting a man in Kenya, leading to legal proceedings. Reports of nightclub fights and aggressive outbursts followed him again and again. The European press started calling him the Wild Prince. For Caroline, the contrast could not have been more painful. She had spent her adult life building an image rooted in privacy and dignity. Now she was tied to a man who moved from one public embarrassment to the next. The strain became painfully clear in 2005. During one of the hardest moments of Caroline's life, her father Prince Rainier was dying. On the very day before Rainier's death, Ernst August fell into a coma after being hospitalized with acute pancreatitis. Rainier died on April 6, 2005. While Caroline was grieving her father, she was also facing the possible loss of her husband. It was a brutal convergence of grief. In the years that followed, the couple moved further apart. By 2009, their separation was an open secret. Caroline returned to live full-time in Monaco. Yet the strange truth is that the divorce never happened. More than 15 years later, they are still legally married, even though their lives have long since moved in separate directions. Ernst August's life kept sliding deeper into conflict. In 2004, he had transferred major family holdings, including Marienburg Castle, to his eldest son, Ernst August Jr. years later. He tried to reclaim those properties and began a bitter legal fight against his own son. The feud became so severe that in 2017, Ernst August Sr. publicly opposed his son's marriage to Russian fashion designer Ekaterina Malasheva and stayed away from the wedding. Caroline's children from her marriage to Stefano attended the wedding along with their half-sister Alexandra, while the groom's own father remained absent over a dispute about money and property. This family drama has echoed throughout European aristocracy, drawing comparisons to other high-profile inheritance battles that have captivated the public, such as the protracted legal fights within prominent German industrial families. The most disturbing episode came in July 2020. Ernst August phoned the police in the early morning, saying he needed urgent help. When officers arrived, he allegedly became highly aggressive, threatened them with a knife, and had to be subdued. Because there were concerns he might harm himself, he was taken to the psychiatric unit of a hospital in Vaclabruck. That detail carried a painful echo, since Vaclabruck was the Austrian town where his daughter with Caroline had been born 20 years earlier. The episode was grim and deeply sobering. The couple who had married in glamour and controversy in 1999 were now living in entirely different worlds. This is the part the darker headlines often fail to capture. For all the sorrow in her marriages and all the turmoil connected to her estranged husband, Princess Caroline herself has endured without losing her center. She turned 69 in January 2026, and today she remains one of the most respected royal women in Europe, known for her poise, privacy, and quiet strength. Over the years, she rebuilt herself into the cultural heart of Monaco. She leads institutions closely tied to her mother's legacy, serving as president of the Princess Grace Foundation and founding the Ballet de Monte Carlo, fulfilling one of GraceKelly's dreams. She chairs the Prince Pierre Foundation, supports the Monte Carlo Philharmonic Orchestra, and has served as a UNESCO Goodwill Ambassador since 2003, receiving recognition for her work on behalf of children and the education of girls and women. Alongside all of that, she raised 4 accomplished children, Andrea, Charlotte, and Pierre Casiraghi, as well as Princess Alexandra of Hanover, and she did much of that work in practice as a single mother. Prince Albert has openly praised the way she brought them up. Now she is also a loving grandmother to 7 grandchildren, and she remains a familiar presence at Monaco's major events, including the Rose Ball and the Grand Prix. In 2020, Vogue included her among Europe's most stylish royals. Things may not look good for the man she married, but Caroline herself has proven that survival is its own kind of victory. With this, we have come to the end of this video. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, do well to like, comment, and subscribe for more content. To enjoy more thrilling stories, click now on the following video that pops up on your screen.